All right, welcome everybody. It's the Housing Commission meeting of July 2025. This year's flying by. Looks like we have forum here. First step up is public comments. We have any? Get limited to 3 minutes. Any public comments? Going once, twice, 3 times gone. All right. There a motion to approve the agenda as written? So moved. Is there a second? Second. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, and then approval of minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as written from our May 16th meeting? Good. Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, moving right along. Okay. Revolving loan fund. Commissioner Nante, Chris? Yes, sir.
Kudos.
Yeah, come on,
That work.
come on up.
And were you able to, Pam, get the? Perfect. So a couple of things. We'll start with kind of the usual pipeline. I know it's a little bit hard to see right now, but wanted to update on that for a couple of reasons. One, since the last time you saw this, one of the Colin Park deals has gone through and gotten approved for us, and that's a deal out of Holland, I believe, with Dwelling Place. So again, continuing to move and grow. A couple things I'm excited about beyond that, though. You can see coming into our pipeline, we have deals in Grand Haven, Ferrisburg, and Unica. So you know, very happy to be spreading beyond kind of the Holland deals and some of the other things, which obviously I know is important for the Housing Commission, the broader, you know, county, writ large. And so really excited about that we're able to be doing that. And you'll also notice on there in some of the small print that some of these deals are actually for sale housing deals. So it's not just rentals. There are some for sale things sneaking in there with like Grand Haven Community Land Trust. You see the Nunica one, as well as the Ferrisburg one will have some for sale. So just wanted to kind of share that. So as you can see too, right, we're talking about, you know, in aggregate, nearly $30 million of loans when you look at the construction loan amount. Some of those are going to get refinanced out when they get, you know, go to perm loan status, which is great because that capital is recycling quickly there. You can kind of see, you know, our usual kind of county share, IFF share, but again, total development cost of nearly $160 million, 554 units, of which 435 are affordable. So again, these are obviously, you know, both deals closed and then, you know, in construction, you know, those Samaritas projects in Spring Lake, it's done. So we're seeing, you know, a lot of those good things happening. The other things I wanted to call out, you know, as I was kind of reflecting about this work this morning is, you know, I think one of the best things that the county did and that we all did up front with this is set, I would say kind of set some North Star goals of what we want to accomplish and some broad guideposts, but weren't overly prescriptive in saying these are exactly the types of deals we're going to do. Like, you know, you see in here, we're doing TIF bridges, again, doing for sale, rental. We've done some missing middle stuff. We've done some line tech stuff. So I think, you know, kudos to the county for having built in that flexibility because it allows us to be nimble and kind of meet the market where it is. You know, Mishta is coming online with some TIF bridge you know, blending of their own. So now we're coordinating with them of whether we even need to do those or share the risk and things like that. But again, we're able to just kind of keep morphing, kind of meeting the market where it is and kind of, you know, looking for the demand, you know, seeing where the demand lies. So very excited about how we're moving forward here. I've got one other document, but before I do that, I wanted to see if there's any questions.
Can you expand a little bit on the Ferrisburg Nunica house for sale housing, what that looks like?
Those are very new into the pipeline, and what I can do, they literally just got added on there like yesterday.
Oh, okay.
I'll get a little bit more detail on it, and I don't know, Paul, if you know much about those
I
projects.
don't, not yet.
They're in their infancy, and I believe the same group that is looking at those is also looking at a 270 unit development in Holland. That was even too early to put on this chart, so when I come back in next quarter, I should have a more clarity on what those projects.
And those are gonna be for sale, hitting like MLS type, or is that gonna be, again, like 125% of median year income, or was that? Like?
I think there's gonna be some ranges, and certainly in like the CLT stuff, we're seeing, you know, it's lower income targets, but I'm not 100% sure on the Ferrisburg unit. So I'll double check that and what kind of those AI targets are and how those.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how the tax dollars are getting leveraged for sale.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, so this isn't happening in Ottawa County, but we actually we're working on something with like Edwin Allen Homes in, what am I, not Ottawa County, but, and not Kent County, Allegan County. Yes, man, I gotta like hit a little caffeine a little hard. But, so we're working on a really interesting one in Allegan County that's actually bridging, it's using New Markets tax credits, TIF financing, and various other things to do a mix of rental and for sale housing, but like some of the for sale housing is hitting like 60% AMI. And I gotta check that one and understand what's going on, but we're starting to see some people are really trying to get innovative even in that for sale piece. So again, I'll see what's happening here, but pretty cool stuff. I think, I was just in Chicago the last couple of days with our senior team, you know, talking about some things. I think the thing that keeps exciting me is we're seeing a lot of innovation coming out of like for-profit developers, which is surprising me a little bit as they started kind of coming into the missing middle space, but are really thinking about kind of workforce housing components. And then, you know, a lot of them hadn't historically used a lot of these tools, the various tax credits and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So it's really interesting once their brains are starting to get around this with their ability to kind of deliver, you know, scale in ways that some of our nonprofits, you know, can't always do. And so again, I think it's really interesting to see what some of these guys are coming up with.
We're feeling the same thing. Ryan, Patrick and I have been called a couple times by some for-profit developers that just what's happening and the activity in West Michigan and in Ottawa County and the attention that is getting, that we're getting in the ecosystem. They are thinking creatively and they are thinking at for sale units with, you know, maybe just using payment in lieu of taxes opportunities at the local level, not other subsidies, and hitting that 60% AMI, which is many of these folks are talking about, which is surprising.
Honestly, never thought I'd see it, and we're
Yeah.
seeing it like a couple of years into doing this. So it's really fascinating. And I think it gets to, and I know you're going to talk about, you know, Ryan's report. It was great, you know, seeing him do that a few weeks ago. But right, like the interesting thing is, right, there's a market that's made for high-end homes, et cetera. There's a market for like LIHTC and things like that. But you know, a lot of what we're trying to do is prove out a market for that middle ground, and we're starting to see it as you kind of show some examples of where that can be successful. You're kind of seeing other people wake up and go, man, maybe we could do that and make a little money here and meet demand. So
Could you offer a reminder on affordable units, what that range, what that means? Definition,
below 120 AMI is how we set that up.
and how far down does that go?
So we've seen some, especially like in some of the Samaritas project stuff, we've seen some at like 50-60% AMI. We can get it, you know, maybe that's something we should do. And I'm not sure, Paul, if we do it in our formal report to you, if we show the full AMI mix, but maybe we should try to quantify.
I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah.
For
Like
each of the
the
projects.
even just ranges.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that is one of the things that has surprised us actually, when we started doing this both here and in Kent County. I think we perceived that we were gonna see a lot of stuff more in that 120 AMI mix and a lot of like the missing middle stuff, but surprisingly, we've seen a lot of folks going a lot lower than that and being creative, and being able to hit some of that 50-60% AMI. Whether it's with some LIHTC projects or again, kind of some of these mixes of market rate, you know, coming down the ladder, lower than we thought. But yeah, we can definitely get a snapshot.
Cool.
And then, the other thing, it's in your guys' packets, was just kind of an example, like one of the things we're trying to do now. I mean, we've talked about this a little bit, but you know, we can take what we've done with this fund and it's gonna continue to revolve for the next 20 years and awesome, we're gonna keep doing cool things. But we really want to expand it. Same in Kent County, you know, like we had a target, just again, I know this is in Kent County, but just for perspective on like kind of how this thing, you know, as a reminder, you got, you know, Ottawa County started this, we used your framework to do the Kent County stuff. So it really has been kind of a joint effort. In Kent County, we needed to get $62 million out within the first 3 years of their investment. They made a bigger investment than us. We have the 2-to-1 leverage, just like with Ottawa County. We'll have done the 62 million in deals in a year and a half, in Kent County. And so now in both Ottawa and Kent, we're saying, you know, there's a there, like, let's figure out how to really truly scale this up, and go try to find more outside investors, whether it's national investors, whether it's local corporations, foundations, et cetera. And so this other document we have is us starting to try to package things, tell the story, you know, show the good things happening and trying to then pivot, you know, pivot out. So I've got some meetings next week with some potential investors, you know, broadly in this, but I think there's a great story here, you know, to that point that we were talking about where the developers are paying attention. You know, yeah, yesterday or the day before, I was talking to someone who, you know, had folks in from like Colorado and a few other places looking to form a fund, you know, here to do kind of some of the missing middle stuff, the workforce housing stuff. So like some national capital is starting to pay attention to West Michigan. So we're trying to really figure out how to take that, you know, use IFF as an intermediate for that, use what we've created with the revolving loan fund. Because in this case, they were kind of investors looking for an intermediary to invest through to do these deals, you know, coming from around the country. So there's just like a lot of really interesting things happening. So again, this is us. It's a little bit of a report, a little bit of a marketing document, but it's showing you guys the evolution of us trying to tell a story beyond my, you know, spreadsheet that I bring, you know, each time. But
That's really helpful.
there are more robust things happening, you know, with us trying to figure this out.
Chris, are these investors, are they private equity firms looking for a return, or are they
It's a mix, like, so sometimes, right, like a lot of those times, then those kind of guys are looking for like returns that aren't gonna make it viable for what we're trying to do. But you do get a lot of like, you get some foundations, but you also get some kind of, you know, family office kind of money, where there's at least component pieces of it, where they're willing to kind of accept a little bit lower return, you know, in order to get good stuff done. So like, and part of the difficulty is kind of sorting through that mess to figure out who's the real folks that are aligned with our goals. Because we start needing to get like 15% returns and stuff like that for investors. There's no way we're doing these deals and doing them at 4% interest rates, right? So like that's the balance here. So we're trying to kind of really assess what that true investor demand is, you know?
have we done anything to reach out to like county residents that might be looking for a secure investment that would locally, you know, improve?
We have not, and I think I mean, that's actually partly why I wanted to put this document in here today, is maybe, you know, to start thinking how we do some of that. I think we wanted to prove that we could get this money deployed. There's some of the things we're talking about, like Ryan and stuff like that too, is, you know, what corporate doors do we go knocking on? You know, the people who have, you know, workforce housing needs, what, you know, obviously Ottawa County has a lot of wealth here. And, you know, but like, that's where we'll need help, opening some of those doors, at least for us, and telling the story. So certainly that's one thing, you know, Grand Haven Community Foundation is an investor in this. I'm meeting with their investment committee next week, and that's one thing I wanted to talk to them about, because community foundations are good, you know, launching pad into some of that, you know, those dollars and stuff like that. So like I think we're just starting to think about this. So any ideas that any of you have of how to open some of those doors? Great.
Well, with the aging population in the county, there's a lot of people that might be looking to find a secure way to invest in the county. And, you know, at the same time, make it a more livable, more appealing area. And rather than speculate on stocks and returns, the high returns are highly speculative.
Yeah.
The secure returns for a lot of retirees aren't that high of a percentage. So I think there might be a market that you could tap into for that. It could be huge.
I agree with that, and I think this is where, so you guys remember too, the county's investment in us, or any investment that these kind of dollars would come into. We are investing in these projects, right? Which is already giving you diversification of portfolio projects, but actually they're investing in IFF and kind of our credit risk. So if 2 or 3 of these projects go sideways, those local investors aren't taking the hit, right? We've had a 38-year history of, building a multi-billion-dollar portfolio and paying all of our investors back, as agreed. And so they're actually taking on the credit risk of us as an institution, not even just this portfolio. So it's both kind of, it's a lower risk, if you will, in exchange for maybe them looking for a lower rate of return, just how the world's supposed to, right? Right. Yeah, I think again, like we really need to like start getting our heads around like a strategy to do that. So certainly, talking with the community foundations, talking with Housing Next and Ryan a little bit, but also, Paul, any ideas, or obviously any of your guys' ideas of, I love to talk about this stuff. So even if it's like, hey, just go grab coffee with so-and-so, happy to do that.
You might be surprised at how many people in the county would be looking for a way to access that.
Yeah.
It might come out of the woodwork if we put together an attractive investment program.
Yeah, I think that'd be something great to sit down, and bat around, see if we can develop to promote that.
We'll put
Describe
that.
in the right way.
All right, we'll put that on our to-do list. Again, part of it had been, I really did not want to start having those conversations until we had a track record of success. And now, sitting here, I think we're showing our ability to deploy this capital, increasingly deploying it in multiple parts of the county. So like we're at least getting to a comfort zone where I'm like, yes, if you invest these dollars, they will get deployed. They will get deployed in Ottawa County. They're not just gonna sit somewhere. And so I think we're at a good time to start some of those discussions.
So looking at the map here, a lot of it's on, Lakeshore or City of Holland. Has there been anything in the middle of the county that's come across your guys' desk as opportunities?
There were a couple, like there were some things kicking around in Hudsonville and Allendale, and some of those projects either didn't happen or ended up not needing revolving loan fund. And then I think certainly that I do have to admit I had to look up where Nunavut was on my phone this morning, but like Nunavut's a little bit inland. So there's some of those kind of places where again we're starting to see it. I just think you had certain spots that were more primed for it, but now there's more and more folks, and especially as these like the brownfield tip tools are getting utilized, and as we said, as developers are starting to take notice, there's more and more viable projects starting to present. So.
Awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Chris. Appreciate it, Chris. Okay. Matt.
Morning.
Morning.
So our progress today shows getting a lot closer to actually being able to distribute these sets, which is obviously our goal. So what you see up here are some renderings that I've created of the in-town Lake Dune rural and forest context for both our first and second size floor plans. And along with this, which I don't have to show you today, but I'll probably send out to all of you, is all of the related construction documentation and all of the markups that we had with Scott Corbett, building code markups, zoning items. Those have all been propagated through all of these sheet sets. So we're now at 8 sheet sets ready for final review out of our 16 sets. Also, my internship back home in Indiana, I was talking to someone about our project and mentioned Raptor Tails. And I work in a design firm, and they didn't know what a rafter tail was. And so I thought it might be useful to have some educational tools to start putting on the table, especially as we get into some spaces that we're getting closer to where there's a lot more public input and comment. So I created some rafter tail mock-ups so that we can start to talk about the design intent. And obviously, these elements have become foreign enough that someone doesn't know what a rafter tail is in a design firm. And that's pivotal to this project, right? To the character that we're infusing into these designs. So I've shown a rafter tail that's been trimmed to the angle of the roof so that it's flush. This would fit most with our in-town concept. I show what we're calling a vernacular rafter tail, so the end of the truss has not been trimmed. And so when you have the roof plane sitting above, this bottom corner starts to stick proud. And then one thing that came up as well during the design process is how are we protecting these end trimmed edges? And so I created an example that shows an aluminum, like thin mill brake metal wrapped to create a cap. That's also a constructability element, but adds to the aesthetic and design, especially for our woods and rural concepts. Answer any questions? That's kind of what we have going on in design right now.
Very nice.
So to clarify there, Matt, these four on the left are all the same house essentially.
Correct. And
And
these
that's those
four on the right are also all the same house, the same floor plan. This is our 440 square foot. This is our 672 square foot. And we've just dressed up the exteriors, changed materials, created different details for tails, like I mentioned, and siding and the trim packages that we're using and some brackets and things. And when I distribute the construction documents, you'll be able to see the other facades of the homes. But these are kind of the money shots that we've been looking at throughout the project, but now we're starting to colorize them. These all show the James Hardy readily available siding colors. So this just adds to the kind of eye candy that we have to go on with the project.
Is there a way that you can calculate the water and sewer needs per unit? And my question is, there are a lot of lots that could have ADUs if we could get that, through the local township zoning. That one of the issues that'll come up is, will that overtax a well or a septic system for a given property? And if we knew what that add-on load would be, then if the septic and well system would qualify for, let's say that you put one of these units on a property that shares well and septic,
Sure.
will it increase usage by, 20%? Will that be a capacity that could be, met with the existing system? What adaptations would have to be made? From my observation, building like a development of small footprint homes is probably, you can put multifamily units. There's so many different things you can build on a developable lot
Sure.
that might have a bigger ROI or more housing capacity. But the ADU can work for a lot of families that have the property, they have, some money to invest. They have people that they would want to have living on their property, family members, maybe move into the parents' house, have the parents live in, a smaller unit. But wrestling that into that, parcel, we really need to be able to make a case that these aren't creating an enormous burden on the
Sure.
water or the sewer. But these are the options that can be made to enhance the system, to make improvements necessary to accommodate that. Cause be willing to guess there are probably 1,000 or more lots in the county that would easily, qualify if we laid it out like that. Getting that past the zoning.
Yeah.
Having that data would, I think, maybe help make the case.
Sure.
The pushback I hear is, well, how do we know the well and septic can handle it? How do we, what's this gonna do to our overall water usage in the community? And are these gonna be failing septic systems everywhere because now you've got, 2 families living there? All the reasons not to do something. But if we had a way to address that, maybe help.
I think that's something we could definitely look into, like a simple calc, we could at least, calculate the approximate water intake that a unit's receiving based on number of fixtures and kind of septic size by bedroom, so we can kind of go off bedrooms and, consider some of those elements. I think the biggest caveat is the problem is gonna be like the existing infrastructure, like whatever John has on his property, what's the current septic sizing? But I think you're right, if we had some metrics that someone was knowledgeable about the size of their field system, they could say, oh, I can, my field system's large enough to support the 440.
Or we put in a new tank and we add a little more drain field, but,
Sure,
that might work economically.
yeah, it's definitely a simple calc, we could add them, sure.
What's the plan for finishing underneath the roof deck with the wrapper tails?
That's a great question. So what I'm looking into right now is getting some kind of treated T111. And then everything would ideally be finished. It would have some paint or stain on it that would protect it and be sealed.
And would that T111 be your first course of like the roof deck framing,
Sheathing.
just picking up, so the shingle, was it all steel roofing?
So that's one thing that we still have yet to figure out the exact fastener to use, but Scott Ford was talking about some like roofing staples that can be used as an alternative to nails that would not poke through the T111 sheathing. But, Scott didn't see a concern with also just nipping off those nails that poke through. I think once it's stained and finished, it'd be hard to notice, but
So, and then the venting in between each one, it's just gonna be vented hardy board with a,
if there's closed soffits, we'd probably consider vented party board or AZAC product. I've seen it where people have taken any brand of like AZAC type board and CNC vents into it.
Mhm.
Alternatively, we're spec'ing circular attic vents. But for most of these, you can see it on that concept. For some of them, I shouldn't say most of them, for some of them, we have a gable vent, which is functional. It's not just for aesthetics. And for the low square footage that we have, the calc of required venting that we need comes out that those gable vents really cover most of it. And so we're probably just poking some circular vents into it would actually go in the sidewall because we have such high heels, and then there's no, because we have the open tails, there's obviously no, soffit to set that vent up into. So they likely live in a truss bay in the actual wall plane, if that makes sense.
Probably within the breeze board that lives the junction of the open soffit and the vertical wall.
Yep.
And, yeah, I'm glad you did that engineering calc. That's why it's so great that you're an engineering student. You were prepared for that question. I think to your question about the T111 and the nails and stuff, that's a fussy issue on a one-off. We would want to think about, okay, if we're doing 16 of these, does it start to feel a little bit more okay that we're running that first course at the perimeter of the roof with a different roof decking than would be conventional?
Mhm.
And then probably transition from the T111 to conventional roof decking
Yep.
after we're a foot inboard of the wall. And then you kind of create a batch build system in doing that. It's a little weird. You guys have probably done it in the custom world, but for a one-off like that, it's that stepping through that process can raise some eyebrows on, I was thinking, price that paying for what it's actually offering.
Yep, and that was mainly my thought behind it was, yeah, labor of, yeah, switching over.
Right.
Sure.
And these
Which is
are all
always the trade-off of
options.
aesthetics, right?
Yeah, right.
Like simple thoughts and simple to build, but it's ugly. You get something good, takes a lot more time.
And that's where I'm looking forward to getting your eyes on this too, and Clint, especially if you have things that, when I send now that we have more construction documentation right together, if you see things that you're saying, Matt, this is not constructible, you know, that's the kind of feedback that we really.
Well, anything's constructible, it just takes time and money.
Sure.
That's the sweet spot that we're trying to hit.
So the use of the T111 is for cosmetic, just to give that underside a kind of a finished look.
It gives the look of, like, if you go down south and you see boards, you know, actually like nominal lumber laid out as the roof sheathing, it kind of gives that look. Without having the siding contractor come in and have to cut boards to place up in each truss bay. This is Nick's genius idea for creating that look, but.
Well, it wasn't my idea, it was a builder who, that's, when we said to a builder, we were building a small house in Holland, and we wanted a certain look, we didn't know how to do it, and it was the innovation of the contractor that led to that solution. And you can see that in historic houses, when you look up at that open soffit. So, yeah, it kind of, if we can get it to work where it doubles as the roof decking, I think that'd be really slick.
T111 is what, 9/16?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I would say with your collection of rafter tail examples, we should get a big piece of T111 and get it painted or stained or something, so that we can even maybe mock up a few of these tails and then kind of show that. This is one of those little fussy issues that's, it's many think of it as a cosmetic issue, but it becomes additive. And if you fuss over a few of these important ones, the overall cumulative effect starts to take on momentum across, you know, a development of 8 or 16 houses. And that's why we're kind of taking this extra effort, because we want the visitor who's stepping through our first development or our second development to step in and understand that there's a quality. They don't need to know exactly what all the things are that they like, but they're going to know that they like it. They don't need to be able to articulate all the details unless they really want to dig into it. But that cumulative effect is what we're after. So that when they walk away, they're going to say, yeah, that was sweet. We want that in our township too. And so this is that kind of, we think there's a lot of bang for the buck in terms of some of these fussy trim details that are still very minimized within the scope of these designs.
Doesn't affect the cost that much.
Right.
What you said there, Nick, was key objective of this whole project is for people to step into it and see it and understand what we're talking about. And all the attention to detail and the aesthetic character is important. We talk about that space of for sale units or even rental that is attainable for people. It's not being built, but there's a lot of pushback locally and with local regulations and the general public, they don't get it. And there are developers out there that say, oh yeah, we've got a product type, it's great, right? We'll slap it together and we'll give it to you. And then they build a site plan and they'll present it to a community that looks so industrial. Right, it's just 2 roads that might horseshoe and the product is lined up. Our communities are not going to want that. It's just, they need to understand, that's why we're taking the time to dial this in, so you'll get the price point, you'll get the community character, and site design is so important, and then we can start to move the needle even farther on this product type. It's incredible the attention on this project. How many residents from around West Michigan be like, makes so much sense. I want a smaller house. Why can't I get that? So we're close to being able to say open source, take it, build it. The more pressure we can get on our local units of government with people saying, hey, I want to build this house, the more we'll be able to make some advancements.
Yeah, I would say, relative to that attention to detail and quality, I would add that the communities aren't going to accept it, nor should they. And I think in one of the following agenda items, you're gonna talk about the housing need assessment and the amount of volume that this county needs in terms of housing units. And one of the things that this project is offering is that it's striving to keep the bar high on this generation of housing stock that we're gonna have to build. And not to digress too much, but Chris's presentation showed a project in Holland, the Hope, Holland Park Hope project, and that project, just as an aside, a brief aside, was in the City of Holland Planning Commission packet for their meeting this week, and that project is absolutely beautiful. And so I just want to mention that because in your circles around the county, when we're talking about this housing need, we're talking about we're always bringing our conversation back to quality and perception and things like that. But that project is a poster child of what we can have if we strive for this kind of quality. And it went, it was in the public packet this week, so it's worth checking out. And this is very much the mindset of our little project as well. And then relative to your comment about getting attention from members of the community, I just want to point out we had 2 builders who came to the meeting today to learn more about the small footprint homes. Mike Lowry and Tim Anima. Mike is with TPC, okay. TPC, like the golf course. Okay. And Tim Anima is with T2 Construction. And both gentlemen are here we're going to talk a little bit after the meeting as well, over in Paul's office, about the project and kind of bring them up to speed. But I just wanted to welcome both of those gentlemen to the small footprint project.
Yeah.
And then one other little update from kind of our ongoing work is that as we shared in the last meeting, we had a project emerge, a site was identified, and a developer was given some, I'll say, go ahead from a friendly owner to pursue a small footprint home development that was not just small footprint home, but also used a existing structure on the property. So we spoke a little bit about that in the last meeting, and that project, I'll just say, is with Doors of Hope, which is a nonprofit that's is an organization that's a part of City on a Hill. And Jared and Clint, you guys participated in a meeting in the past, what was it, 3 weeks ago, just kind of looking at kind of the nitty gritty of some of the soft costs that are going into that project. But we've got that project teed up, and I'm sharing it publicly in this meeting because it went in the packet for Planning Commission for the City of Holland for July, then ended up tabled. So we're currently targeting study session in August, which is right around the corner. So that project is, that's kind of where that's at right now. But just to recap, that one's got a real site, it's got a real owner, it's a real project, it's not just a fictional parcel. And so we're hoping to advance that project through the process and be successful with it. We've got ongoing conversations with the City of Holland Planning Group. And we also hope that project, because it has tangible specifics attached to it, is going to be useful for our cost estimating process, because we aren't throwing hypotheticals at our spreadsheet. So that's just a little update on that. So stay tuned for emails addressed to you as housing commissioners on that one, because we may invite housing commissioners to come and attend City of Holland Planning Commission meetings in the near future in support of that project.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Yeah, Nick mentioned the housing needs assessment that was done on June 17th. Paul, you wanna take a look on
Yeah, I can do that. I have a couple slides that I took from Ryan Kilpatrick's presentation the other week when he presented the full scope of the report to an audience here in the main conference room. Just some key points to it. You have the document within your packet. There's a lot of information in here, but summarizing it, may I? Thank you. No. So this slide, rental units, in order to meet demand, for rental units by 2030. As you can see, the breakdown by area median income, the 51% up to 120% range. What's occurring there from the development perspective is on track to meet the needs identified in the report. It's less on track for the below 50% AMI. That's a tougher market, of course, but our ecosystem in the housing space, a lot of nonprofit developers organizing and advancing this type of work. Lakeshore Habitat, one of those, in collaboration with Jubilee. So that will continue to gain momentum for the rentals. So we permitted 1,600 new rentals since 2021, and 26% of those were at below 80% AMI. So again, on track. For sale housing needs, on track at the higher end homes, those making 123,000 plus a year. And this is the big conversation, right? This is where we're looking at alternatives and innovative approaches, and traditionally sized smaller footprint homes can help this market from those making, below 50 and up to 120,000 a year. There's a lot of opportunities there. And that's where we talked about having the need to just scale up on this product type. We continue to advance it with local units.
Paul,
Yep.
after this meeting, can you send this out via email to everyone?
Absolutely.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, I'll share this with my office.
Perfect. I will do that. 88% of new home sales are priced above 400,000. I think we're all, that's not surprising. If you look at kind of a breakdown to understand no more than 30% of your household income, what you can afford. You make $90,000 a year, you get $2,200 a month. Some of the slides here again that Ryan shared, just put in perspective on who we're talking about. For examples on some of these professions, school teachers, their housing budget based at 30% is $1,800, but the median cost to own a home in Ottawa County is $2,800 a month. So how do we start to bring that down?
Is there an asterisk on where that percentage rate, what they're using for? Oh,
I don't know.
that's curious, because that makes a huge difference, even a half point.
Yes. Yeah, it does. Good question. Welder, same. I'm just kind of looking at what the discrepancies are and what's affordable and what is available. So in these slides, simply break down, the income required based on median rent right now is on the right-hand side versus what people can actually afford. So the data is helpful. Just put in perspective on why we're continuing this work. Those are slides. Yeah, Ryan had a much larger slide deck, but I think the first view of that presentation kind of stuff.
Is his available for public consumption?
Yes, his full, yep, we can send that out as well.
Yeah,
Yep.
if it includes
Got
that.
that up on the website.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, and that presentation had the front end of it was the data, the back end of his presentation went more into the mechanics and zoning and things.
Gotcha.
The first half is the interesting part of the data.
I unfortunately couldn't make that meeting, but was there a time of collaboration on how to attack this problem at all, or was it a data set of?
It was a data set shared, and then, what are those opportunities? It's looking at local regulations, right? And it's looking at opportunities like building smart capital stacks, getting the right developers in town. So, yeah, it was well done. It highlighted the need again. I think we all realized the need to keep the foot on the gas on this one. Sharing the information is important, but how do we bring people to the table? And it really comes, for the most part, to hit that need on the for sale units, especially. Again, when grants aren't always going to be available and all these other subsidies, how do you build product that is affordable? We just got to continue to work with local units of government. Those in the Holland area and up in the Grand Haven area, they are advancing a little bit farther than some of our other local units of government. We have 24 local units of government in the county. I think this is all part of an equation that we all need to contribute to. It's just, having the right conversation. You know, as our project and this work gets attention, we're continuously talking with local planning commission folks and trying to find an the right way to sit down, say, I'm not telling you what to do, but here's some data and here's the need. Let's have conversations. Let's talk with your local planners. Let's help them, give them more information to make the right zoning changes. And it is an educational process that takes a while. But
Did any of them come to the meeting? For the June 17th?
there was a handful of local government officials there. Yes. I think we can be a lot more intentional and with local governments and just continue to collaborate with them in the right diplomatic way.
I think Nick, or you made a comment about, if we have, you know, residents of local units going in and saying, hey, I need this, or the kids need this, and here's the demand, we can back up with the data.
Yep.
Like, you can lead them to the water, but you can't make them drink, but at least lead them to the water. So
Absolutely.
that's where the next step of getting us really rolling.
Where do we get our demographic data? Like, are we able to show a township that you have X number of graduating seniors that are entering the work market and this percentage moves out and maybe goes to college, gets a job in another town? This percentage is staying. This is what's happening in the aging of your community, you know, 30 years ago, average age, you know, lower. And if this trend continues, that, you know, is that gonna be the community that you want?
Right.
And, you know, to be able to create, like, if you do nothing other than what you've been doing, this is where you're headed, and if that's okay, then no problem. But if you really wanna have a more diverse group of people that grew up in the community, staying in the community, these are some of the things that would have to be changed. Do we have that kind of data, or?
There is a bevy of that type of data available through the Census, American Community Survey data that comes out as estimates every year. We have to dive into the details on how that is organized, count at what scale, county level, or if it's by block group or by township. But I think it's a great point.
I
It
would
just
love to
adds to
delve
the
into that.
storytelling.
You know, I volunteer to kind of get into that look, and then we could kind of project based on the local community demographic. You know, this is where you're headed, and, you know, is that truly where you want to be? You know, how much of your local population do you want to retain? How much are you willing to give up?
Yep. Take one community and take Crockery, for example, and do a case study and just kind of test out the data analysis component. I think that'd be a great assignment to work with you on.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, noted.
Good.
Oh, I also want to add, in addition, so Ryan's slides, in the study itself, there were two other areas that I consider of note. There's so much going on in the ecosystem, but as part of the housing needs assessment and the RFP that went out, I wanted to make sure there was particular attention placed on housing for those with physical and or developmental disabilities. It was noted in this report for the first time, the housing need in that space. It didn't dive deep into the data, but it noted that there's a limited supply. Because you have housing needs for, you know, real specialized services, but there is a gradient of level of service needs of home livability options for that population. I've been having conversations with CMH, Dr. Brashears, and then his deputy CMH director, Anna Bednarek. They do want to collaborate more, and they need to, I think, pull people around the table to understand how we can start to move the needle in that space for that particular population. So I would like to start to spend some particular attention there. I think there's a great need. I think there's enough people in the area that we could get around the table to talk through that. And CMH has indicated that's a need. The other area, it's kind of three prongs for us, right? It's traditionally sized homes, let's see how we can support the developmentally and physically disabled population. And then you had mentioned this earlier, Pat, our aging population, as noted in this housing needs assessment, that the 75 years old and older group, that is the largest growing demographic segment of this county. And it's noted in the report that we have limited supply of housing for that senior population. And as we know, it's kind of a cycle of housing product, right? To transition to age in place, new families coming into their older housing stock. I'd like to continue, and Pat and I, we've touched on this a little bit, and Doug too, on, you know, how do we start to think more and reach out to other developers, maybe property owners, and advocate for more of that senior living development product type that will be a big need.
I don't know if this is the right time in the agenda, but there are senior living centers that particularly in the south along the coast in the Gulf area of housing units that have recreational facilities, so grandchildren come to visit, and it's a draw. And personally, my children who have children talked about it too, and my daughter's in-laws bought a place in an area like that, and the whole draw is like, bring the kids, you can hang out at the pool, there's a little mini golf, and it would be a shame to not have an option like that in such a beautiful area as Ottawa County. And it's a high rise, so you've got like high density based on acreage, which allows for a lot of other land use, like the water park, the mini golf, whatever. And as people move into that, they're still creating an attraction. Come and visit me, hang out, and they have rental units for visiting families, so you don't have to have a big 3-bedroom unit. But when family visits, they can rent one of the available facilities. And then they have meals and all kinds of programs that are menu driven. It's an option.
Yeah, I have the fondest memories growing up going to visit my grandparents down in Florida at a facility like that called Wildwood, and it had everything available for them. And it was a golf cart community, and as kids we could go and experience all of that. And then the facility provides all the medical needs, the grocery store needs for that population. It's nothing like that up in this area. It's something interesting to explore.
And I think our beaches are better than anything down south.
Yeah.
Maybe not warm all the time.
So Paul mentioned disabled housing, that kind of thing, and it kind of got me thinking just for a second about physically disabled people that are maybe wheelchair bound. I don't think these small homes are set up for that at all. Have you ever thought about a design that might
We talked about
care for
88,
them?
36-inch wide doors and, 42-inch hallways and zero barrier access and stuff like that. It's all possible, but it's still, you can
I
make,
mean, can you do it in a small footprint?
Oh, yeah.
I'm asking.
all day, yeah, for sure. Lynn's more the expert here, but it's a different, how you, for the foundation, how you do, the shower pan has to be recessed. The entryway is gonna be recessed, like, it's all doable.
Yeah, with these
Yeah,
small
that's
homes,
a
they're
great
all
idea.
slab on grade, so it's pretty easy to do.
Well, I mean, I'm just
Access
envisioning
like
in
that.
some of the plans I've seen before, you couldn't even turn a wheelchair around in those places, so.
I mean, would it be tight? Yeah, but, you got most apartments that aren't ADA available either.
Yeah, but there are a lot of apartments that are ADA compatible that aren't huge. They're just slightly bigger than a regular one. So, yeah, it should be definitely doable, and that especially in the ADU, accessory dwelling unit, that, because that would make it possible for a lot of older couples to for families to move into the smaller unit, then the family takes over the homestead and,
Yeah,
you know,
and this range of smaller footprint home goes from 446 up to 1,040. They're
I'm just
More
thinking
space
of
options.
the floor plans we've seen in the past, they did not look like they were designed to be.
The smallest unit, the 440, it'd be tight to be able to accommodate, you know, a 42-inch hallway and.
showers and all of that.
Right.
Have to be much bigger.
It'd be a neat assignment for our intern Matt, maybe look at an option that's,
Especially if 75 plus is gonna be a majority of
Right.
our needs.
yes. So we'll dive into that, see what that looks like with, through that lens.
Anything else on the housing needs assessment? Good, thank you. Ordinance amendment review.
Okay, this is the ordinance that went through the county Board of Commissioners. They've already adopted the ordinance. This is a ratification on our end. The change to that ordinance was simply allowing the appointment to go be made strictly by the chair of the county board of commissioners
Instead of ratification by the full board.
instead of ratification by the full board.
Now, is this in line, and Doug, this may be a question for you, this is more in line with state statutes?
I think it's a difference of opinion. I voted against this on commission.
We had quite a debate about this.
I watched.
I'll kind of let Ron take over who wants to. I voted against it. I didn't think it was necessary. And,
Yeah,
you know, go from there, I guess.
if you're looking strictly at the language, it would be necessary to amend the ordinance, which they did, and take that out. The reality is, I suspect that our chairperson probably would, seek board ratification anyway, but we're not required. Others may not.
Yeah, yeah.
Along that line, the ordinance has, amended, I don't know, if you have a copy or not, I can just read the part that's I think applicable. It's under, 400.4.2. C, it says, it's one of the duties of the Housing Commission is to approve and maintain bylaws which must be reviewed and approved by Ottawa County Corporation Council and the county administrator, and may not be inconsistent with this ordinance. So the ordinance itself demands, in effect, that the bylaws be consistent with that. And that's one of the issues before you today, is whether you want to amend the bylaws to strike that ratification.
And what happens if we don't?
Well, you gotta keep in mind that you exist at the direction of the Board of Commissioners. I think, you know, they're the supervising authority here. I think you've got to honor that. They could,
You think, or is there?
well, they could disband this group. I mean, they got too radical, I suppose, you know, in theory, but, there's no reason. I don't see it as an issue worth fighting about. I think just make it comply with the law.
Yeah, for,
Now, along the line, I know, Doug, you've asked for a legal opinion, not so much on this, but on the commission, being a statutory commission in general. I did check into that,
Okay.
and one is actually being, developed, so I hope that will help you. Down the road.
an opinion on this commission,
Well, Doug was asking whether or not, the commission could change form and not be a statutory commission, which does have some, I guess, drawbacks, 5-member limited, committee members and so on. And that's being looked into, to go a different direction, but.
Yeah, and if that's the case, then we can always change bylaws again. Yeah, we do have an annual review of bylaws.
Right, so both things are being looked at, but I would suggest that you modify your bylaws so they comply with the ordinance, which complies with the statute, be done with that issue. And then you could take a look at Doug's issue down the road.
I mean, I'll be voting no on both of these just to be consistent, but, definitely.
so Doug, that further clarification. If you wanted, I'm not saying you want it to change, but what other options are there for this commission?
How do you mean?
Like, if you had mentioned, hey, we could always just go back and change the bylaws later. It wouldn't be a statutory thing, but it would be, what else? Like, how else could this commission be ran?
Maybe an advisory body
So
only
you're
as
talking
opposed
about
to
what
under
is, what are
statute.
the alternatives?
Right.
Yes.
I mean, so we have the groundwater board, I think it's a good example of, you know, larger body. That brings a lot of perspective. I think the 5-member board for 5-year terms is limited. Yeah, you know, I think you guys have done great work. I think a lot of folks in the community want to be part of that, and I think we probably have a bunch of applications already for,
For Holly's spot, we do.
you know, so opening that up, I think would be positive.
Mhm.
I think, you know, we have disagreements, that's fine. But I think having a larger commission that has, you know, more participants is a positive. So, I understand the issue at hand is this. But, you know, going to a larger board, I think it'd be positive, right? And I don't think we're necessarily restricted by state statute. I don't think that we are a housing commission as state statute foresees us,
I see
right?
what
So
you're
if you watch the discussion online.
Yeah.
I don't want to repeat the whole.
No, yeah,
You know,
I just,
I think that, you know, we're not at PHA, our housing ordinance says that we'll seek PHA status. We're not doing that. So, you know, we're already kind of contravening our own ordinance here by not doing that. I think hopefully we get a legal opinion and, you know, look at that in the sense of, hey, we have a housing commission that kind of functions as, you know, a housing board, in the sense of groundwater board, that brings a lot of opinions to the table. And, you know,
yeah,
so it's the work of the whole county, right?
Yeah.
So,
yep, no, and I understand your desire to stay consistent. And Ron, I appreciate your opinion on, like, hey, let's just keep the ball moving and be consistent.
Yeah, there's no reason we can't continue to talk through it.
Right,
For a legal
right,
opinion where it wants
Yeah.
to go.
Yeah,
Yes.
100%.
But
Yep.
today, aligning our ordinance with bylaws would be good.
So there is a suggested motion, and I'll read it out here, is to ratify the approval of the Housing Commission Ordinance Amendment approved by the Ottawa County Board of Commissioners during their May 27, 2025 meeting. You guys have that, and we've discussed it. It's there.
Do we have to ratify it? Can someone?
You really
explain that
don't,
a
you
little?
just acknowledge it.
Just
more than
acknowledge it.
ratify.
Okay.
It did happen.
Okay.
We're telling you that, I don't know if you need the motion at all. or not. The next one's a more important one. Modify your bylaws.
Okay, then the rules of procedure, kind of tapped into that a little bit, about the bylaws. So there is a yearly review, and once we get that legal opinion, we can always dive back into the
Yeah,
bylaws.
sure.
Yeah. Any questions or anything on how the bylaws are written currently?
This comes under Article 1, under membership, subcategory appointment, and the words that would be stricken are subject to the ratification of the Ottawa County Board of Commissioners.
I mean, I don't like that. It's just gonna be the chair that can make that
That's what
unilateral
that's what
position.
the statute.
I know,
says
I think the
that
statute wrong.
enables the
Yeah.
existence of
I
this
get it.
group, that's all.
Yep. I think it, in my opinion, it should be, collective.
Yeah, I'm of the same opinion, but obviously we're not a part of that. Right, deciding vote, we operate underneath them, so.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing to keep in mind is the ordinance that the county adopted, the longstanding ordinance requires that your bylaws comply. So.
Yeah.
So
I think.
you could be radical and say no.
Right, I'm
Really.
putting no on both just because I think that state statute doesn't necessarily say that I think we have autonomy in a sense, form our own bylaws. And that's why I'm putting.
I understand.
So there is a motion to approve the bylaws as proposed. Anybody wanna make that motion? So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Any other further discussion that we want to have? Even though it's essentially like Ron said, it's kind of out of our hands as a.
It is, and Doug is right, you know, if there is a legitimate reason to amend the bylaws in the future, you can do that.
Right.
It's not. Like, you can never revisit the issue. At some point.
I think for the sake of just keeping the ball rolling on what we do, or not making huge waves that aren't necessarily necessary right now. That's my, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No. All right, motion passes. Okay, before, that, Doug had mentioned, and I could probably do this in a different spot, but, Holly Cole, who had been serving on our board for a number of years and been a great member, has decided to resign from the board. She will be dearly missed. So if you guys have her contact info, please, reach out and tell her congrats, and also, thank you for her service on the board.
I checked with, our executive administrative assistant, Gina, on, the posting of that position. It's been posted, and there are 12 applicants.
Oh, nice. That's pretty good. Yeah.
But the appointment and alignment committee of the board meets next, Tuesday or Wednesday, 15th, I think.
Okay.
And, that would be on the agenda, what to do about that. To the best of my knowledge, they haven't interviewed any of those folks yet.
Yeah.
But
Is there a time frame, Ron? So,
I don't think
when that
so.
person,
I'd like to see it happen before your next meeting, but
agreed, yeah,
probably won't.
okay.
And I've shared this with administration on the board as well, with the alignment committee, but for this committee, from staff perspective, each of you bring such a valuable contribution in your industry sectors. And one sector that I think could be valuable for this housing commission and support strategic impact moving forward in our work is involved in lending and banking. And that would be an asset around the table, in my opinion. I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
Yeah, I would think that would be a really great addition. Also, somebody who's maybe on a zoning.
That's what I was gonna say.
I would see that, and maybe that's more isolated into our small footprint, program, but that is such a big key to the puzzle of unlocking housing potential.
Oh, I suggest you send a note to, Josh Berger, who's the chairman of the A&A committee. Could maybe consider that as strategy to look for someone
There's
among those 12. that
There's a
might be
different language
available.
there in its own aspect, so.
If the commissioners are comfortable with that, recommendation from Ron, I can reach out to Josh Berger. Let him know our thoughts.
All right, great. Public comments, last, option for that. Anybody? Going once, what, 3 times? Okay, next meeting, August 7th. Is proposed. So far. Good. All right. Record time, 11:08.
Yeah,
Okay.
nicely done.
Appreciate it.
Good, thank you.